Hey everybody, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today we're going to talk about the Turtle Beach Velocity 1 Race. This is a $650 wheel and pedal set designed for PC and Xbox, and with the launch had some growing pains admittedly because this product seemingly came out of nowhere from Turtle Beach. There was a lot of hype about it because it was direct drive, it had a load cell brake system, and it had a button box which you can mount on either side. So naturally there's a lot of things for people to get excited about, and then with the torque spec being about 7.2 Newton meters on the direct drive wheel, it was a pretty solid offering at this price when you consider the value and coming from a larger brand, so you would think the long-term support would be important as well. Now, admittedly, my launch wasn't too smooth either. In the reviews that accurately covered this so far, I've watched a couple of the larger channels. I'll have links in the description below for that. They tested and pointed out a lot of great and important things that the consumer should be aware of. And I had some of the issues myself. I had delays with the gas pedal or the accelerator pedal, causing issues for racing. Sometimes it would not respond and sometimes it would stick, and when you're really racing at a competitive level, that makes a huge difference, and it's kind of a game-breaking performance issue. However, my delays in covering this product, I think helped work out as far as my own experience goes, because firmware updates have come out several times since I received it. I think this is my fourth firmware version so far since I got it, and all of those problems are gone now. Totally transformed the wheel's experience.
Now, the full setup is just as important as the wheel itself, because without that, you won't have the same experience. Being in the US, I went with racingcockpits.com. This was not sent to me for review. I purchased it because, frankly, I didn't want to wait any longer. I just wanted to have a working setup for the new Velocity 1 race. My particular setup of choice was the Cockpit Pro system with the racing seat bundle, and then I added the monitor mount. Now, if you're looking to purchase the same thing or something similar, I will have a link in the description below. That'll save you $50 just by clicking the link. It's a generic affiliate link that anyone can sign up for if you refer somebody, but I figured if it saves you money, great. Overall, I've been really happy with the Cockpit Pro system. It's an 80/20, so the chassis is very stiff, and by having the flexibility it has, it can pretty much fit any body type. There are plenty of other great solutions out there, but I do recommend taking a look at their website because it may have a setup that you like. And when you factor in the price, the quality, and the ship time, it's usually a pretty good option. To better suit my particular office, I added the wheel upgrade because frankly, it's much easier to roll around large caster wheels instead of dealing with the feet. Normally, you're supposed to have the casters on the outer edge of the frame to give you more stability, but I found it was very stable even on the inside, and it was able to fit in tighter places because of it. To help increase immersion a little bit, I added the Creative Stage 360 soundbar, which has HDMI switching, very helpful for connecting it to the PC and Xbox, and I also mounted the subwoofer underneath the seat using 3D printed brackets that I made. It's not the best solution out there in terms of sound quality, but for the times where I don't want to wear a headset, it adds a nice step of immersion that you can't find on just any computer monitor. You know, it's kind of funny because the pictures online actually made the wheel seem a little bit cheaper than it actually was in person. Once I unboxed it and set everything up, it actually looks really nice in person, and most of the things that you touch feel pretty good as well. The buttons all have clear legends, really good illumination, and nice tactility as well, so everything feels pretty good when you actually start using it. Even though the billet looking plate is not real billet metal, it is still rather durable and it provides some needed grip for your feet so you can have a pretty sure footing. I do like the shapes of the pedals and the fact that you can basically adjust the positioning at small levels, and you can shift the brake pedal slightly left or right to your liking. It's another fine touch, and the pedal system also attaches directly to the PC, so if you don't want to plug into the wheel hub itself, you can run a separate USB cable to the PC that way. If you don't need to use the clutch pedal, it's actually very easy to shift the spring on the lower setting, and then the clutch pedal basically collapses, getting it out of the way. This does give you more room to move the brake pedal left or right, or you can leave it as is if you just want a cleaner look. The enclosure for the motor and behind the wheel is a little bit clunkier and larger than normal. It's obviously wrapped in a lot of plastic, but again, once it's mounted, it doesn't look that bad, and because it's behind the wheel, it's not really affecting how you interact with it either. Part of that size comes from the internal display, which presents a lot of useful information if you have the live data feed, but it also helps with configuring the wheel. Because the screen is so large, it makes it very easy to dial in all of your settings, even if you're not using the included software. Sort of paying homage to a racing engine underneath a clear bonnet, you have the K-drive motor visible through a little clear window. It's a rather nice touch, and it is backlit so you can see it at night. If I had one complaint over the wheel, it's the way the stitching meets the center hub of the wheel itself. It produces a rather sharp edge, or at least a sharper edge than everywhere else, so if you rest your thumbs on it like I do, it's not the most comfortable feeling over a long period of time. The included display is quite nice, and it does give you 3 modes to work with, and the screen isn't large, but frankly it can't get much larger without actually being blocked by the wheel. Because the wheel isn't huge in diameter, if they went much larger you'd have too much obstruction from the wheel rim itself, so I can see why they stuck with this size. Even though the switch box is really nice and feature rich, there is a surprising amount of flex, which is due to the way it's mounted to the actual center wheel itself. There's nothing you can really fix. It's not that the metal bracket that attaches it isn't strong enough, it's the actual housing is flexing thanks to that plastic enclosure. The bottom toggles have 3 settings, but in the software it basically functions as an on-off switch. Perhaps in future firmware they'll add the function of the middle switch, but for now it's on or off. The middle dials also work very conveniently as well because you can use it to cycle profiles, volume settings, game to chat mix, even the torque of the motor. So if you don't want to go through all the settings but you want to turn the force feedback down, it's very easy to do so. The bottom dials spin indefinitely, and that helps for quickly navigating through settings such as setting your wheel rotation to 1800 degrees instead of 900, but the top dials are basically a spring twist that go one direction or the other, only a few degrees. In addition to the clutch pedal, you have 2 assignable clutch paddles on the left and right side of the wheel. There's not a huge amount of movement here, so it does take some practice to get used to, but it is a nice extra feature to have. The wheel itself has a quick release bracket, which bodes well for future and hopeful product releases if they come out with new wheels down the road. It's relatively easy to use, but it is proprietary, so right now this is the only wheel that works on it. For those of you not mounting it to a full racing cockpit like this, it does use a clamp system as well, and the side panels kind of flip up almost like gull wing doors, and there's an included Allen wrench on the right side of the wheel, allowing you to extend the clamp and tighten it on your desk. Alright, so let's kick things off on the Xbox side of the house with the Velocity One Tuner app. And I found that every time you open it on Xbox, you're greeted with a nice little error message like this. We're going to just hit A and move on. It's been doing that for a while, but at least the rest of the software still works. So I'm going to go down and click on the Velocity One race system. And here's where you can do a lot of the configurations of the wheel through Xbox. Now you can do pretty much all of these settings through the wheel itself, but at least there's an app to make it a little bit easier graphically. And this helps a lot with button assignments and also testing dead zone because you have a nice UI here to kind of see how well everything's dialed in and make your adjustments before you even get to the game. I find that the brake pedal, even though it's load cell in the medium sensitivity rating, is still a little bit too sensitive. It really doesn't take a lot of force to max it out, so I recommend playing with it in different games, but the low sensitivity tend to work a little bit better for me. So when we move over to the profile setting, this is where you can choose which onboard memory slot that you have. Now these settings are saved on the wheel itself. I haven't found a way to copy my own profiles from the Xbox side onto it. You have these little dots in the corner here, but if I click on it, nothing happens. Moving over to K Drive, this is where you adjust the wheel strength, the damper, all of that. And if you go to custom, which a lot of people are going to do, there's a little UI bug here, and if I click down, it just skips. And I thought that something was wrong because I couldn't customize it. When you go over to Rally and then go down, now I can click A and start adjusting my sensitivity as well. So if you run into that bug, just, at least at the time of this review, just shift over and you'll be able to customize it. Otherwise, if you go to track, drift, or rally, it's going to have its own predefined strengths. So now we move over to the wheel tab, and depending on which game you play, you'll likely have different assignments here, and that's where those profiles come in handy. This is blank right now, but you can obviously customize it to your own liking. The other important thing to consider is the wheel rotation, which again, depending on the game, might be important to change as well. I found that playing on Horizon 5, it required more of a rotation degree, and I got in the mid-1000 area before I was happy with the sensitivity. So if you're not happy with the game and the way it feels, maybe adjust it here. So moving over to VCU, this is where you have assignable buttons for the switch box. There's some pretty cool things you can do here. Now, originally you couldn't modify the engine and T1 mappings the same, and now you can. So those top 2 buttons and switches are very much handy compared to how it used to be. You can't do anything with the stop button because that'll just turn the system off. So that one's grayed out. Now it's really nice about the D1, D2, D3 slots. What I used the most was the K drive because you might find that one game the force feedback is too strong. So you can assign the strength to one of these dials and turn it down or turn it up based off what your experiences are. It's also helpful for assigning to like game to chat mix or volume in case you're using this for audio controls as well. On the PC side, I didn't use any of that there. I was doing more of other functions because the sim racers frankly just give me more control. But on Xbox, this is incredibly handy. So let's move over to the RMD, which is kind of a bummer here. It's kind of pointless to even look at on Xbox because at the time of this review, it doesn't do anything. You can set it to road, sport, or race, whatever you want. but it will always say waiting for game data because as of now, at the time of this review, it doesn't work on Xbox. As far as using this on PC though, I do like the telemetry output style on Sport the most. Road is far too delayed, it feels choppy, it's such a small dial that it kind of becomes useless as far as seeing the information out of the peripheral of your vision. Sport provides a nice, clear, concise output, and that visual tachometer that you get at the top kind of serves as a brighter shift light. Because the shift light system is all integrated into the screen, those LEDs kind of blend in sometimes, but this nice big bar helps. And you go over to race, and this is really good for the sim racer if you can quickly discern all of that information, but it really just depends on preference. You can change the telemetry on the RPM indicator to go to different things, but the only downside is you can't actually see that change on the right to preview it. You just kind of have to pick and see how it works in game. Changing the units doesn't change your preview either, but at least that's pretty self-explanatory. Now, considering I review a lot of audio stuff, the audio tab is usually a fun thing to talk about, and it's pretty basic here. You have volume adjustment, mic monitoring, so if you do plug a gaming headset into the wheel, you can hear yourself speak, and then game to chat mix is built in. This is really handy for the Xbox side of things in case you want to turn down the game to talk with your friends. Mic mute at the bottom in case you don't want your microphone to ever be hot. And then on the right hand side, you don't get custom EQ, but you do get bass boost, bass and treble, voice boost, which is just going to boost your mid-range, or you get the house signature sound. If you turn on superhuman hearing, I'm not really a big fan of the way that impacts the sound. You're not using the wheel for a first-person shooter, so to me, it's more of a marketing thing, but I would recommend never really using this. The overall output of the steering wheel itself is quite weak, so don't expect a lot of power if you have hard to drive headphones. Now on the lighting side, even though I'm adjusting this here, because the profile is set to GT, it's not doing anything to the wheel. It's only adjusting it on the app itself, so I can change any color I want here and change the brightness and the breathing cycle and all of that effects there on the bottom, but it's not changing anything on the wheel itself. Instead, you'd have to manually assign this profile to the wheel to see any of these changes happen. Moving over to pedals, this is again where another important setting is. All I really adjusted here was I changed the brake sensitivity to low, and I pretty much left everything else dialed in. It works really well from a calibration setup out of the box, and the dead zone and 0 to 100% was pretty much perfect. The system tab is pretty straightforward. Basically, you have screen brightness in the dimming for timeout, and then you have calibrated center point. And if you tap that, the wheel will power cycle and then do its full rotation to recenter. And then of course, if you go to firmware, this is where you can flash the firmware. The firmware update cycle does legitimately take a long time. Some people might be optimistic and say it can take up to 20 minutes, maybe it'll be 10. It pretty much always hits the 20 minutes whenever you're adjusting the RMD. The firmware itself is really where all the core functionality is, and that update is typically much shorter.
Now, a lot of people don't realize the reason why I moved out west, I'm from the Boston area originally, is because I'm really into cars. I used to race in real life. I did time attack racing. I did some drag for a while, but the time attack and road course is really what I love the most. I souped up a lot of different cars, my most used and tracked car being my Mazda RX-8. I did a lot of modifications for the track, and that was what I missed. And sim racing to me was never quite the same level because you can't feel everything that the car feels when you shift gears, stuff like that. So I know this isn't going to bridge that gap, but the idea of a load cell pedal, a stronger direct drive wheel, the switch box, there's these little things that help bring some of that experience back at home. So naturally, being in the price range is at, I wanted to review it for that. I wanted to kind of touch back on what I grew up enjoying and frankly missed quite a bit.
So when it comes to actually playing games on Xbox, I'm going to start with my least favorite game I tried first, and that's Horizon 5. The game itself is pretty fun, and I enjoyed it to an extent with a controller, even though I'm more of a track person than an arcade racer. But I had to go into settings and change the steering rotation settings all the way up to 900 degrees, and fine-tune the steering ratio settings on the wheel itself. Otherwise, it was far too snappy, and the game already feels kind of artificial and arcade-ish as it is. So if you don't have this dialed in on top of it, it just wasn't that enjoyable. Forza Motorsport was much more enjoyable to me, and even though there's some talk about how it compares to Gran Turismo 7 or the older Forzas, I felt it worked really well with the Velocity 1 race. The direct drive and the 7.2 Nm force was definitely used well here. It felt really nice on the track, including braking traction, hitting curbs, high speed with heavy braking. Everything felt more dialed in, and it was much more immersive for me. Now, one of my favorite games to play on Xbox was actually F1 2022, not 23, because that does not support this wheel, and right now it's all speculation on if or when that will ever happen. I guess F1 24 will eventually support it, at least that's what the rumors are, But for now, 22 was really, really nice. It felt really good. The force feedback wasn't as strong as Forza Motorsport, but overall it still felt pretty immersive. And again, the whole ratio and then the brake sensitivity felt great as well. Now, you can use the Velocity 1 Tuner app in order to stream the telemetry on PC, but I ended up just using SimHub pretty much the entire time. It made it really easy to dial in, and frankly, it was just more of a preference and convenience thing than anything else. I played a lot of different games on PC, and starting with Forza Motorsport because I could directly compare it to Xbox, I did like it much better on PC. Basically, not only does it do the telemetry support and give me much higher quality graphics thanks to a more powerful GPU on my computer, but it also supported true ultra-wide screens, whereas on Xbox it's basically being stretched. Now don't get me wrong, Forza on Xbox is still a wonderful game and the value is significantly better because the entire system investment is much lower, but you do get a better experience if you play the same game on a PC with better hardware. Now I also played games like Assetto Corsa Competizione, Automobilista 2, and these games, they're just different. I wouldn't say one is necessarily better or worse than the other because people are going to have different preferences, but I did end up enjoying it a lot in the end. I think having a variety is really important because just frankly keeping it fresh makes it fun, and if you're spending this much on the hardware, spending a little bit extra on extra games is helpful as well. Now my favorite game to play with everything considered was Le Mans Ultimate on PC. It just allows me to use every single button on the wheel and switch box. Frankly, I didn't even have enough buttons on the wheel and switch box to control it all, but the overall racing experience was just incredible. The graphics looked great, the physics were even better. In fact, it's some of the best racing physics I had, and when I tied it with something like the Velocity 1 race, everything just finally felt exactly like what I was looking for. If I had to pick one game in combo, it would be the ultra-wide screen with Le Mans Ultimate on the Velocity 1 race.
So that about wraps up the video. Now, I made this video not to discredit any of the prior feedback because it was 100% valid, and I think everyone should share their honest take on a product like this, especially when it's this expensive. I think Turtle Beach kind of jumped the gun with the initial launch firmware issues that should have been caught, and honestly, they would have been better off delaying the release because, as you see online, when you look at the reviews, that hurt the success of the launch of this product, which is unfortunate because it's obvious they wanted to do a lot of things from a feature standpoint and value. How it is in its current state is such a significant improvement for actual usability. The specs didn't change, but the gas pedal always works now. And little things like that is what translates into how much you enjoy your product day to day. So if this still has been on your radar and you've been waiting for an update or just kind of seeing where things are at, I can tell you it's much better than what it was before. I can't fix or show any fix for some physical design flaws, such as the flex in the bass pedal or on the switch box. Those exist no matter what, so you just have to kind of decide if you're okay with it in that state or if you even need those features in the first place. Maybe they'll have revisions down the road, or as new wheels come out, it will address some other issues I had. But for the most part, at least it's better than what it was before. So if it's on your radar, maybe still consider it. I will have generic purchase links in the description below. I have nothing special worked out with Turtle Beach. Doesn't affect what I say about it, but that will help you find it if you want to purchase it on your own. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching and making it to the end. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you at the next one.